Okay, so firstly, in financial maths, it's very important for you to know that finance has to do a lot with interest. Interest is a major part of finance. So based on your understanding, what is interest? What is interest? Because if you borrow money or if you are saving money, there has to be interest involved. So based on your general knowledge, what is interest? What?
Money that you either pay extra, take a loan, or you receive extra saving because of the amount of time you take.
Alright, thank you for that. Now, your interest, interest has got two cases. No, I'm talking about the general definition of interest here because we have got two types of interest as well. Okay, interest is just the cost of borrowing money. Okay, interest is what? The cost of borrowing money. Okay, so interest is the cost. Is the cost of borrowing money. Now, this can be done in two ways. One, we have a case where a person doesn't have money, then they go to a financial institution or go to a person. There's a name for those people who are they are called loan sharks. You go there, you don't have money, then you say, "Can I have maybe 1,000, right?" And then they'll say, "Okay, you must pay me interest, say 10%." Or if it's a bank, you say, "Okay, we'll charge you 10% interest." Okay, so you can borrow. Then there is also a case where when you invest your money into a financial institution, for the bank will be borrowing from you. So the bank has to pay you what? Interest. Are you following that? There are two cases. If an individual that does not have money, then they go to the bank and they say, "Okay, I want money to buy a car, I want money to buy a house, but I don't have the full amount. Can you give me some money?" Then the bank will say, "Okay, fine, we'll give you, but you are going to pay interest." Yes? I'll talk about that. Okay? So, with interest, it's just the cost of borrowing money. So, if I have got my own cash, I go to a bank and I put the money into my bank account, it's my money. The moment I put into my bank account, the bank will seem like the bank is actually borrowing from me. That's why the bank is supposed to add interest. If it's a savings account, the bank has to add some kind of interest. Okay, but the issues about the amount of interest is controversial though, but the bank has to add what? Some interest. Okay, now it's very important also for you to know that the banking sector has become very wealthy because of interest, and it's a special type now which is called compound interest, which I'll talk about just now. You can catch up later. Then they need to find some time. Time is not on our side. Okay, all right. Now there are two types of interest now. There is what's called simple interest, and there is also compound interest. Now, simple interest is the interest calculated on the amount borrowed or invested. Okay? Simple interest is the interest. I forgot to put the word interest. It's the interest calculated on the amount borrowed or invested only. I'm going to put the word only in capital letters because this is very important. Okay? So if I come to you and say, "Can you lend me 100 rand?" And then you say, "Mr. Chiponda, okay, it's fine. When you pay me, you just pay me maybe 100, say 20%. It will be what? 20 rand. That 20 rand it is an interest which is calculated on the amount borrowed. So it will be 20% of 100. It will be 20 rand. So that's simple interest. Simple interest is only calculated once on the amount that has been borrowed or the amount that has been invested. Okay? Let's talk about the formula for calculating this. So formula for calculating simple interest. The formula for calculating simple interest is A is equal to P times 1 plus I times N. This is the formula, okay, for simple interest calculations, right? Some of the simplest examples involving simple interest include higher purchases, whereby a person wants to buy maybe a TV set, or you want to buy a coffee table at home and so on. Normally, it's those assets that are not too high. Unlike cars and houses, they are large assets. Okay, you'll be charged compound interest there. But for small assets, usually the household goods, they charge what? Simple interest. Now the question will be, what do these letters mean? Okay, your P is the amount borrowed or invested. So P is the amount borrowed or invested. Amount borrowed or invested. That's P. Okay? P is the amount borrowed or the amount that has been what? Invested. Then I is the interest rate as a decimal. I'll show you. Generally, the interest is given as a percentage, so you convert it to a decimal. But your calculators now, they are so good that they can convert it on their own. So you don't have to convert. Okay, I'll show you that. Then N, usually, for this grade, N will be the number of years. In grade 10, the N will be the number of years. Well, this is grade 10.
If it's for like 6 months, you put half a year.
Yes, then it is 0.5. Then A is the accumulated amount which includes interest. Okay, A is the accumulated amount, and sometimes it's called the future value. Okay, this is also called the future value. And the future value for simple interest, where we don't take into account the depreciation, then your A will always be greater than the P bar. Okay, so this equation is actually a linear equation. Okay, it's a linear equation, and you can draw a graph on this. Okay, are you following? You can draw a what? A graph. Let's sketch the graph. No.
It's a function, sir.
Yeah, it's a function. It's a function, yes. Okay? So, the equation is A equal to P times. Yeah, sometimes it's important for you to know. Okay? Because that can be tested. Okay, so A is equal to P times 1 plus I times N. Okay, so if I remove brackets, can I have your attention? Can I have your attention? If I remove brackets, we get A equal to P P plus A equal to P plus A equal to P plus PIN. That PIN now, that's the interest. Okay? That's the interest which accumulates. So this is a linear function. And our two variables here are going to be the A will be on the y-axis and the N will be on the what? X-axis. Remember, your time in years must always be on the x-axis. I hope you know this. Not really, but you need to know that the equation for simple interest, it's a linear what? Function. Yes.
We only got off the last thing.
So, can you look here, please? This P here, the P, remember that's the amount you borrow or the amount you invest. Am I right? So, you cannot invest zero if you invest an amount above zero. So, we draw a linear function which looks like, okay, let me draw it nicely, choose that one. So, you have a linear function which looks like that. Okay, whereby here we've got n in years, and then here we are gonna have accumulated amount.
No more y, x.
No. Okay, and then the value here, that would be your P. Okay? That's the amount you borrow or the amount you invest. Your gradient will be equal to the P times I. Okay? So it's a linear function. Please be aware that you may not find a question which will test you on this graph. But it's important for you to know that the formula for simple interest is a linear function.
So, sir, it says only in the.
So this is the amount A.
With the accumulated amount, not be at the top where you finish.
No.
But isn't the initial amount?
Okay, this is the y step. Remember, what this means is your accumulated amount cannot be, sorry, your P cannot be zero.
No, not that. I'm saying, isn't P the amount you put in?
Yes.
So, isn't your accumulated amount after the interest and everything? Wouldn't it be at the end after all the
You
years?
see here, let's say after 1 year, you can have an accumulated amount. 2
So
years.
there's an accumulated amount for every year.
Yes. Remember, N is in years. So after every year, then you get a what? An accumulated amount.
I thought there was a accumulated amount only at the end.
Yes, that's how we get. So there's first year here, second year, third year. So to know how much money is now in the account after a year. When you draw a vertical line, then obviously you will find the amount there. Alright. Yes, it's a linear function. Okay, let's talk about compound interest. Now, compound interest is the interest calculated on the amount borrowed plus the interest that is already accumulated. Okay, compound interest is the interest calculated on the amount borrowed or invested together with the interest that is already accumulated. What do I mean here? Okay, let's say you borrow money, you're supposed to pay it over 3 years. Okay, so with simple interest, the interest is only calculated once on the amount you borrowed. With compound interest now, that interest will be calculated every year now, which means if it's going to be for 3 years, then it will be calculated what? 3 times. If it's simple interest, it will only be calculated once. So for compound interest now, whatever interest accumulates in the first year plus the amount which was borrowed, you calculate interest on that total. Okay, it's like this. Let's say you have got first year, right? You invest money, right? You invest money, so it will be P plus the interest. Okay, the interest is represented by a capital letter I, by the way. You know this is it. You don't know. Surprising. Okay, so capital letter I stands for what? For interest. At the end of the first year, let's say a person borrows money and they want to pay it off over 3 years.
And the grade 9 R. So 9P, 9R.
Let's put a value for that interest, okay, as a percentage. So the accumulated amount at the end of the first year will be the amount borrowed P plus P times the interest rate. Okay, the interest rate, let's say it was 10% per annum. Okay? Remember, the accumulated amount is going to be the amount which was borrowed plus the interest on the amount which was borrowed. That's why I put here P, which is the original amount which was borrowed, plus P times the 10% per annum. The second year now, whatever amount you get at the end of the first year becomes your new P, which will also include what? The interest. So your new P now will be P plus P times 10% plus, right? This P here plus P times 10%. Okay? Then you multiply this now. I'll put that in bracket times 10%. Okay.
So whatever you get,
Right. I think, listen, I know that it's a Friday, but please do me a favor. Read in the lesson. Look here. I'm saying, by the end of the first year, all right? If a person borrowed a certain amount P, if they were to pay it off at the end of the first year, they are going to pay P plus P times 10%. Let's say the P is 10,000. So by the end of the first year, the person will pay 10,000 plus. The person will pay 10,000 plus 10,000 times 10%. And this will be 10,000 plus. What is 10% of 10,000? It's what? 1,000. So the person will end up paying what? So the person will end up owing 11,000. Wait. First, you need to understand what's happening with the first year. Right? Now, this 11,000 here, it becomes the new P for the second what? For the second year.
so instead of starting with 10,000 plus 10,000,
You are now getting what? 11,000.
11,000 plus 10,000.
Yes.
10%.
So it's gonna become it's gonna become 11,000 here plus 11,000 times 10%. Okay?
So it won't be 10% of 10,000.
No.
It will be 11,000.
Yes, it's now 10% of what? 11,000. So it's more like whatever interest accumulates plus the original amount you owed, you calculate interest on that. So it's more like interest on what? On interest. Are you following that? So if we were to compare now simple interest, where interest is only calculated once, and compound interest, you find that if you were to borrow money and pay it off using simple interest, you pay less as interest as compared to if it's compound interest. So banks now, they are very clever. They calculate most of the borrowing of the borrowed amounts using compound what? Interest, because they get more money by using what? Compound interest. So if you read what I say here, okay? Compound interest is the interest. Okay, I forgot to put the word interest. Please add that if I don't use not there. I think sometimes when you are talking and writing, you can miss out something. So, let's let the word interest. Keep doing it along. Please add the word interest there. It's not allowing me for some reason, I don't know why.
Yes. Our test is coming up with other 50, right?
Yeah.
It's 20 marks is the analytical geometry,
15 is the tree graphs.
and another 50 is algebra.
Finance.
Or was
We are only testing you on term 3 work.
so it's not going to be algebraic function.
No. The algebraic functions, you see them in your final exam test. Okay? Alright? So this is what you need to know. Now, the formula for calculating compound interest. The formula for calculating compound interest is an exponential equation. So that equation is A equals to P times 1 plus I, that's the interest as a decimal, raised to the power of n. The meaning of A, P, I, and n is the same as I said earlier. P is the amount borrowed, I is the interest rate as a decimal, n now, that's an exponential term. Okay, n is the number of years, and A will be your accumulated amount or your future value. So in everyday life, for financial institutions, they use compound interest whenever you borrow money. And with compound interest, if you borrow, you are going to pay more interest. So for the bank, if the bank lends you money, it's an investment. Do you know that?
Yes.
If the bank lends you money, it's an investment. Because you are going to pay what? Interest.
So when you put money into the bank won't give you compound interest anymore. They give you simple interest so that they pay less.
They are supposed to give people compound interest, but banks somehow it's a gray area, that part now.
So they make you pay more and they pay less.
Yes, because it's a business. Remember, banks, it's a business. My first job, I used to work in the bank. Okay. So I got a better understanding of what this is all about. That's a story for another. Okay. All right. So make sure you are aware of this. Interest. Whenever interest is quoted, it is quoted as a percentage. That percentage, okay, that interest as a percentage is denoted by a small letter r. Then when it's as a decimal now, that's small letter I. So I will always be equal to R over what? 100. I'm mentioning this because when I teach the senior classes like grade 12, some of them, they won't be aware of this. Your interest rate as a percentage, that's R. Okay? So this is interest as a percentage. Right? And then I is the interest as a decimal. You have to know the difference. Okay? It's very important for you to know that is the difference. Both are interest, but in two different formats. One is as a percentage, the other one is as a decimal. Okay, so also you can make R the subject, so R will be equal to 100I. So if you want to convert the interest as a decimal to interest as a percentage, you multiply by what? 100. Okay, just pay attention. I'm going to go over these two examples. So the first one, it says, Trevor invests an amount of 20,000 rand in a bank. Calculate using appropriate formula the accumulated amount after 6 years and the total interest you will receive if the interest rate is that. Okay? The total interest. So the person is asking for the total interest. He's not saying the total amount in the savings account. It is the total interest. Okay? There. That's the total interest. Okay? So let's calculate if the interest rate is 4.5% per annum simple interest. So I'm doing A1. So first, we need to calculate what A is. Okay? Then our P is 20,000 rand. Our interest as a decimal is going to be 4.5 over 100. This is the same as 4.5%, by the way. Okay? Remember, I showed that interest can be written as a percentage and as a decimal. Then N, now N here is 6 years. Okay? Now, since the question is talking about simple interest, it means we use this formula. A equal to P times 1 plus I times N. So our P here is 20,000 times 1 plus, okay, that I is going to be 4.5. Now I can convert this 4.5 over 100, it will become 0.045. That's 0.045 times 6. Okay? Then you check out your calculator. Okay? Check out your calculator.
0.045.
Yes, 0.045. So it will be 20,000 times 1 plus 0.045. Okay, let me just use my calculator. Okay, my calculator is on. So let me check out my calculator. So it will be 20,000 times 1 plus, now I put 0.045 times 6. Then you close the bracket. You have to be a guru of your calculator, by the way. Yes, you have to know your calculator very well. So the answer that you get is 25,400. Now this is not the only way. Another way, your calculator, you can put a percent. You see where I put I there as a decimal. Can you look on the board? Instead of putting 0.45, I can put 4.5, and I'll put the percentage sign. Now where is my percentage? It's here. So I press shift. I have to press shift and then, so it will be shift and then the percentage, like that. Are you following? Remember, interest can be written as a decimal can also be written as the what? Percentage. So you can decide the format you like, but your calculators can also accommodate that. If I click on equals there, I'm getting the same what? The same answer. Is that clear to everybody? Right. So the answer will be 25,400. Right. You know where the one comes from? The original formula is supposed to be like this. Remember when I drew the, supposed to be like this. This one. So you factor out P, then you create the what? The one. And the other thing that I think I mentioned it, but I don't know whether you were listening. I told that this is the interest. Okay? It's not C, but that's the interest. Okay. So let's get on to the second example. Now, look here. You see that the interest rates are the same. Now, let's see how much a person will is. That's not the answer in terms of the interest, by the way. The interest is always equal to the accumulated amount minus the amount borrowed. Hey, can you pay attention? Pay attention. The question is asking for the total interest. So this will be 25,400 minus 20,000. So the answer that you will get there is going to be 5,400 rand, because this is money. Okay? So this is the total interest that a person who is charged simple interest will pay. Now, let's see how much interest the person will pay if it was compound interest. So let's move on to the next stage. Are you following? Huh? You following? So, since I've got the information here in terms of A, P, I, and N, all I have to do is just write the formula. A equal to P times 1 plus I raised to the power of what? Of N. So, 20,000 was invested plus I'll put 0.045, or you can put 4.5%. N is what? 6.
On this one, you don't need to define it as 0.045. You can just take
So this will be equal to, let's take out the calculator. So then we've got clear here, 20,000 times 1 plus 0.045. Then you put the bracket, then you put the exponential function, put 6 there, check how much the person will pay on top. Okay? Now this is not the interest, by the way. So it will be 26,045 and 20 cents. So it will be 26,045 and 20 cents. This is the rent. So the total interest that the person will pay is always equal to A minus P. So this will be 26,045 and 20 cents minus 20,000. And the answer that you get here, it will be 6,045 rand and 20 cents. You following? Huh? So the total interest that the person will pay will be that. Now let's compare the two now. So the interest rate is the same. If it's compound interest, the person will pay that as interest. If it's simple interest, the person will pay 5,400. So, if you are investing your money, which of those two do you think is the best option? It's what? Is it simple interest or compound? If you are investing your money, it's compound. If you are borrowing, Simple. Because you pay less interest. Are you following?